Okay, so a really huge, big warm welcome to everybody. I'm absolutely delighted to be welcoming Ashton Applewhite today. I came across her first when I was recommended to listen to her TED talk. So I found it on YouTube very easily, very quickly, and was incredibly impressed. I just thought it was brilliant. Brilliant from several points of view, not just the content, but the articulacy with which she expressed that content. It was really excellent. And I found out yesterday, I think it was, on Twitter, that her TED talk has been nominated as one of the top 50 essential civil rights speeches of all time, which I think will put her up there amongst the greatest and the best. So massive congratulations to you, Ashton, on that. I think it's it's fantastic. So I can thoroughly recommend that if you want to look it up. I then came across Ashton in person about a year ago when we both attended a conference at which she was giving the keynote speech, and again was deeply impressed by her wonderful expressive articulacy. As I said, she was just very engaging, and of course I agreed with everything that she had to say. I'm going to start by a quote from her book. So the book I thoroughly recommend. I've been reading it the last week or so. It's called This Chair Rocks: A Manifesto Against Ageism.
You've got the American edition. There is a print edition in England out by Melville House that has a different cover. So
okay, all right. I did get it from Amazon.
Same book.
Yeah, other suppliers of books are available, but that's where I got mine. I'm going to quote from the last chapter, Beyond Ageism. I think it's a good framing for our discussion. I hope so anyway. So this is it. It wasn't until I started the project that I realized the degree to which my anxieties about growing old were again in large part a function of the society in which I live. It's not loving a man that makes life harder for gay guys, it's homophobia. It's not the colour of their skin that makes life harder for people of colour, it's racism. It's not having vaginas that makes life harder for women, it's sexism. And it's ageism, far more than the passage of time, that makes growing older far harder than it has to be. So I think that that's an extremely, it's an excellent framing, as I said, for the discussion that I want to have with Ashton, because we watching this, I would assume that we are all could be described as what Ashton calls in her book olders. I refer to our age group as older, usually older women, because I'm usually talking to women, but it encapsulates the idea that we've lived, for some time on this planet. And so as I say, the audience for this are people for whom this is very pertinent, given that we are the age that we are. So I just want to start quite simply by asking you how you started and became involved in this campaign that you are leading, basically against ageism, which affects us all.
Ageism and sexism, of course, because they're deeply intertwined, as is every form of prejudice. I sort of backed into it the way I have backed into everything in my professional life. I never had a plan. I wrote a book about women who initiated their divorces because I did that as I turned 40. And that sort of turned me into a writer, not quite by accident, but it was never a plan. And it really was a good 15 years till I sort of found my way, not by accident, into this new cause, because I was in my mid-50s and I realized I was afraid of getting old, that I had all these apprehensions. And so in my nerdy way, I started researching longevity and interviewing people over 80, and realized within a matter of certainly months, if not weeks, that everything I thought I knew about getting older, being really old, which is probably an ageist thing to say, but in our 80s and 90s, was way off base, way too negative, not nuanced enough, or flat out wrong. And I became obsessed with why so few people know these things, which was quite parallel to why I ended up writing a book about divorce. We have this incredibly grim picture of women ending up, the sad divorcee on the bar stool, drowning her sorrows while her husband, ex-husband marries a trophy wife and lives happily ever after. And that's not the reality. So why do we live in a culture that drowns these things out? And, the short answer is that if aging is framed as the problem and our wrinkles are depicted as tragedies, that some hideous mistake that we've allowed to happen, then we can be persuaded to buy things to stop it. And if the natural transitions of age are framed as diseases or that can be cured, then we can be persuaded to buy things to try and stop them or cure them. And aging is not a problem. It's not a disease. It is this powerful, I think, especially for women, not to generalize about anyone else's experience, but powerful, lifelong process. And then this journey on which we embark the day we're born.
I also think what's interesting is that ageism is going to affect all of us in a way that things like homophobia or racism, will only affect that portion of society that is within that group. And it is bizarre, isn't it, that we are all going, if we're lucky enough, and I want to stress that as well, if we're lucky enough to age, my own mother died when she was 67, so I've outlived her for 6 years. And effectively, we are all going to age, and we are all going to be at the effect of this thing called ageism. How would you define the term ageism? Just very simply, as I said,
the dictionary definition is discrimination and prejudice on the basis of age. We are being ageist anytime we come to an assumption about someone on the basis of how old we think they are, which we all do all the time. Me too. And I think it's also important to point out that you're too young is also ageist. Older people bear the brunt of ageism in an ageist society, but young people experience a lot of it too. It casts a shadow across our entire lives.
Yeah, absolutely. Just give us some of I've obviously been reading it in your book, and each chapter takes a different aspect of ageism, but what would you say are the most important impacts that there are on us of ageism as we get older?
It obviously depends on individual circumstances for two important reasons. One is that if you are a privileged white woman like you and me, Tricia, we have a different experience than if we are a lower income woman of color who faces additional hurdles to health and well-being, and on out. If you have a disability, it depends on where you live, it depends on your culture. So the experience is, of course, unique, and it is made more individual by the fact that if I could put one fact about aging blasted into the brain of every human being, it would be that the longer we live, the more different from one another we become, because we age at different rates, physically, cognitively, socially, spiritually. So if you think about it, every newborn is unique, but they have a lot more in common than 17-year-olds who are way more homogenous than 47-year-olds, and so on. So that's why it's always problematic to generalize. But I think the worst thing it does to us is unconsciously, usually, cramp our sense of ourself, our own power, our own attractiveness, especially in the case of women, our place in the world. Because if you hear all these messages or experience not being, sort of shut out of conversations, perhaps not hired for jobs, blah, blah, it becomes very hard to battle this messaging from the culture unless we compare notes and realize, oh, it's not our fault. It's not something we did wrong. This is a message in the culture. So I would say the most damage. And then that plays out in the world in how we present ourselves in any arena, how we at the hospital, at a job resume, on a date. It affects our performance and our identities in every aspect of life.
Yeah, I mean, that's really, really interesting. I mean, the shut out of the conversation is where my battle against ageism comes in, really, in the sense that at 65, I felt shut out of the conversation about beauty, which might sound extremely trivial. And I do absolutely pick up on your expression of, privileged white woman and so on. But it felt to me like somebody who has always been really engaged with the whole idea of loving the painting of my face, and I make no apology for that. I put on makeup every day since I was 16, and I love doing it. And suddenly at 65, it was almost like the beauty industry was turning away from me and saying, but you can't come to this party anymore, unless you're prepared to accept an anti-aging message. And it really, really, really bothered me.
Well,
and
I'm so glad you pushed back.
Well, exactly. And my pushback was in everything that I've tried to do with Look Fabulous Forever, to say, hang on a minute, whoa, why do I have to absorb that message from you that I'm somehow less because I'm older?
Yeah, why do we have to accept the equation, really, to put it bluntly, that old equals ugly? I mean,
Exactly.
we appreciate, when a flower explodes, when a furniture or a piece of porcelain gets that gorgeous cracked veneer, all these values are, the fancy way of putting it is socially constructed, which means we make them up. Fashion is a perfect example. In a certain period, everyone's supposed to wear long droopy things, and then in another period, everyone's supposed to wear big hats, and then no hats, and then whatever. We make these values up. We can unmake them. We can make new ones. It seems almost paradoxical that sometimes I feel like, most of the people in the movement are women, because we're braver and because we have the most at stake. And sometimes the most difficult ask seems to be to look at ourselves more generously and each other. And it's a little complicated because, and I know that I won't offend you by saying this, that the whole discourse is a little problematic, because here we are focusing yet again on the idea that the most important thing about us is how we look, rather than how we behave and operate in the world. But they are intertwined, and there is, the desire to look beautiful, to adorn yourself, is deeply human. The tough part is pushing back. I used to think I was the only person that looked in the mirror in the morning and went, hey, what happened? And, it turns out it's everyone. And there are still mornings when I do that, but I am better at saying a lot of stuff happened and most of it was pretty great, and move on to the next idea.
Yeah, my feeling about that is that the feelings of self-confidence and self-esteem are wrapped up for different people in different things. Absolutely. For me, a lot of it has been wrapped up in feeling okay about myself. And that involves, quite a lot to do with the way I look. Now, all of that, as I said, you can throw that back at me and say, well, that's fairly trivial. But the thing is that well, it's not, because for me, that is how I live in the world. And then what you've just said, if that is compounded by being older, which is a message that I get from an ageist society, that somehow I am less valuable, less important or anything like that. And at the same time, I'm feeling less confident and less good about myself, then the whole thing actually snowballs, which brings me on to my next question.
Can I make a point about confidence? Yeah. That it is the ultimate aphrodisiac. Also, I can't help saying, I apologize for blowing my nose. I promise it's not COVID. For some reason, I have horrible allergies. So please don't worry about any viruses coming across the pond to you.
We're not worried about
beauty. However we measure beauty is just one metric of appearance, of identity, blah, blah. By the same token, whether or not we are sexually active or romantically inclined is likewise just another metric. It may not apply to you. You can reject it. But if, for the sake of this point, that is the metric we choose, to be sexually active, look at your friends who are. They are not the thinnest. They're not the youngest. They're not the prettiest. They're not the whitest. They are the ones who have beaten back this narrative that, to not be thin and white and young, of course, is to fail and is to become undesirable. And that is the task in which you are, you are embarked and have inspired so many other people, so it's fantastic and it's important.
Thank you for saying that. So just a couple of things about what we can do personally. What would you see it as, what can we do personally to challenge ageism? And possibly the second part of that, or you can answer that instead if you wish. How do we?
I'm writing it down so I don't forget question number one before you get it.
So it's about challenging ageism. How do we go about doing that? And the second part of it is, how do we deal with internalized ageism? So they are different things, I know, but whichever.
Well, they're deeply related.
Yeah.
I mean, there are 1,000 ways to challenge ageism in the world. And the last chapter of my book deals with all kinds of policy recommendations, which are kind of US centric, but not entirely. There are fantastic European organizations at work in this arena. And a lot in the Center for Aging Better in the US, the International Longevity Center of London, terrific organizations. But as the saying goes, all change starts within. The most essential, the most uncomfortable, the most important, and the most liberating place where we all have to start is to look at our own attitudes towards age and aging. My favorite comment about my book, and I do hear it a lot, is, oh crap, I had no idea how ageist my own thinking was, how much I was sucked into these, just thinking, oh, there's nothing wrong with, for example, I bought a greeting card in London by the Angel Tube Stop that said, years ago, that said, like most women my age, I'm celebrating my 30th birthday. And that these things used to seem funny to me, or I didn't pay any attention. I told senior moment jokes. When we start to see our participation in this culture that demeans and trivializes people on the basis of age, it's not a good feeling. You're like, oh crap, I'm part of the problem. But it is the essential first step, because most of us have never stopped to think about these things, and we can't challenge bias unless we're aware of it. The good news is, and it's hard to unlearn, especially when it comes to values, the wonderful part that happens right away after that. And and please, I'd love you to speak if this is true of you, Tricia, but I think generally, once we start to see it in ourselves, then we see it in the greeting card rack. We see it in the beauty magazines. We see it in the cinema. We see it in the casual remarks that friends make. And this is what consciousness raising does. It helps us see that these are not personal failings, personal issues. They reflect social and economic factors that we can come together collectively and challenge. So liberation is right around the corner. But the very first thing to do is to think about how you yourself think about your own aging. And we all want to know people's ages. How come? What changes in your mind when you have a number, for example? How do you use the words old and young, which are perfectly good words, but we tend to say, I don't feel old. What that typically means is I don't feel useless, I don't feel ugly, I don't feel incompetent, because we live in an ageist world. And, I felt more ugly and useless at 13 than I ever have since. We can feel all those things at any age, just as we can feel sexy or energetic or whatever at 13 or at 103. So use the actual feeling that you feel, or rather than old and young as placeholders for, insert negative thing, insert positive thing.
There's an awful lot in what you just said there. I totally agree with you about owning up to your age. I think this coy thing that women have is, I'm not going to tell you how old I am, guess, or something like that.
I hate it when people ask me to guess. Oy.
Yeah, exactly. So it's a big trap, isn't it? But this thing about owning your age, let me give you a wonderful example. A while ago, I was talking to somebody who's responsible for putting models into catalogues for clothes, and this is a firm that sells their clothes to older women, no question. And I said to her, why do you use models that are so much younger than the people to whom you're selling the clothes? And she said, Trisha, for goodness sake, nobody aspires to be old. If we put older models into our catalogues, people wouldn't buy the clothes because they don't, they wouldn't feel it was an aspirational brand. So I said to her, but that's incredibly ageist. You cannot, can you hear yourself? And she said, I'm not ageist. How dare you? So, this.
But I hate to admit it, there is an element of truth. If we don't deal with our own denial about aging, which is part of that first thing, like why am I pretending to be younger? Whatever you happen to be doing, no judgment. We all do these things. A lot of women would look at a catalog of older women and not shop there. Don't avoid things aimed at older women because so many of us are in denial a dead giveaway, and I see this all the time in professional people in Ageland, as I call it, senior services who gerontologists who talk about older people, and they have gray hair. There is way more road behind them than ahead, and they are still talking about older people as them, right? And it's a tough habit to break, but until we, especially if for women in the culture saying, don't go there, don't stay young. And we have to acknowledge that we're not young anymore in order to acknowledge that, this catalog is full of people who look like us, who look excellent or terrible in the clothes, and we're going to shop accordingly.
Yeah, exactly. I just find it really, really bizarre.
That's a funny story.
I was also told when I started Look Fabulous Forever that it would fail miserably because nobody would want to buy makeup, which was identifiably different and made for an older skin. And I was told by somebody who was responsible for doing the sort of in-store presentation stuff for Chanel, and it was a man, and he said, I'm really sorry to have to tell you this won't work. And I was furious, and I just thought, I'm going to show you that you're wrong. And I was attacked by somebody on Twitter not long after I launched, who basically said, but you're ghettoizing older women by having a brand that is specifically for them. And of course, the opposite has been true, that, we've been incredibly successful. And I think we've been successful because we have used language and image in a way that is acknowledging the fact that we are appealing to older women, but doing so in a positive way, in the sense that we're actually saying, look, guys, yes, of course we're all older, but it's okay. It's fine. This is how it is, and it's fine.
And often better than fine. I mean, for a lot of, I like to point out that no one actually wants to go back to their youth. And for older women, late life is often the best time of our whole lives. Partly it's double-edged, the way it always is. For some women, there are losses, and for some women are liberated by, sort of not being stared at in the same way, not being objectified in the same way. And that's often not under our control. And that is a loss. On the other hand, it's hugely liberating to care less about what people think. Mm-hmm. And so, there's two sides of it, and you are certainly helping women, find company with others who acknowledge that and are, not only not ashamed of it, but kind of delighted.
Yeah, well, I hope so. Anyway, I've got a question here about, so this business about ageist society. Would you say that there are any good examples of societies in the world which are definitely less ageist than, say, the US and the UK? Because I think we're pretty similar.
Yeah, I think everything about the US is worse, especially look at a COVID map. Sorry, I couldn't resist. But because the US is the sort of an epicenter of youth-centric pop culture, of a lot of advertising comes out of the US, hugely ageist. Tech is super ageist. It's all, all the powerful people just about are young white men. So it's also racist and ableist, shocker. So I think the US does feed ageism on a global scale more than any other country. But yes, industrialization, urbanization are huge trends that have fostered segregation, the ageism, by age segregating more. You know, when people lived in villages where all ages were in contact, everyone had a natural place from birth to death. Now, I'm not saying we all need to go back to living in villages, but anywhere there's age segregation, and also extreme capitalism, a system that sorts people according to their economic usefulness, is not kind to children who don't make money, and it's not kind to older people who are perceived as drags on the economy, although that is completely false for any number of reasons I'm happy to go into. You know, part of it is we don't value women's work as much as men's work. More older people are women. We don't value volunteer work, even when you can say, you know, well, by watching, say, my grandchildren, I am enabling their parents to go out and make money for your corporation. So there are, India is still, I think, I can't remember what percentage, but I think it's close to 80% of older people live with their families lifelong, and that they are less ageist. Some Asian countries where there was a tradition of Confucianism, ancestor worship, are likewise less ageist. But I think it's important not to fall into the trap of, like, first of all, of wishing, oh gee, everything was perfect then, and why can't we go back to that? A society that holds older people at the top of the pyramid, like the early United States, which was a gerontocracy, right? Old men, old white men held all the power. Those are crappy places in which to be young. Right. And I think that it's what we really want to do. We are everywhere in the world, people are living longer. It is a permanent global demographic trend. And I think it's super important not to value old people more than young people, or young people more than old people, but to look at how we can help recognize that youth and age are different, that they each, you know, have different good things about them, bad things about them, which are subjective also, of course. And how do we help build a society of age equity, give kids the support that they need, help young parents with families the support they need, help people in the middle who are often supposed to be at peak career and coping with children and helping their parents who might be needing more help, etc., and on out the lifespan. So how do we create a world of age equity? Because the rules that make some cultures better than others to grow old in a traditional sense are disappearing.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I mean, I feel that those places that still have less ageism than we have in certainly the UK and the US, people tend to live longer, and perhaps in a way that is more fulfilling than we do. And I think, there are areas of Japanese culture, Chinese culture, etc., and as you say, within Indian families as well, where older people are seen as important parts of, still important within the family and so on, in a way that perhaps we've lost.
And in the society, I mean, the worst thing to happen to old people was the invention of the printing press. We used to be the repositories of knowledge. I'm not going to go back and say, I'm sorry, we learned to make books. We have to adapt to the world as it changes.
I was having a little wry laugh when you said in the past America had a gerontocracy, when you've just voted in a president who's 78 years old and taking over from a president who is 74 years old. It's actually quite interesting.
They never mentioned age. Biden is busy appointing all these, special commissions of this and that. There's no commission on aging. And there was a lot of discourse about, whether someone is too old to fill in the blank to be president. Wrong question. Is the person competent? Do you like their ideas? Right? Yeah. Age is not what makes someone competent or incompetent, conservative or progressive. It's the individual.
Yeah, absolutely. That's a whole other slightly different discussion, isn't it? But I've just enjoyed this conversation so much. It's brilliant. I love to talk about these things, because I do think they're incredibly, as I say, they're important for us because we're actually living through it. We're all back, and it's an opportunity now for Bryony, if you've got some questions for for Ashton.
Yes, we did have a couple of questions, and if anyone has any more questions, if you just pop them in the chat, we can ask those. So Ashton, Jackie had a question. She wants to know what your thoughts were regarding age during the pandemic. Obviously, there's been lots of comments about older people and isolation, so she was just wondering what your general thoughts are about how older people have been presented during the pandemic.
Well, I'll lead with it's complicated because age does put us at higher risk in the pandemic. And in the very beginning here, I saw, lots of older people, sort of racing out and about to prove that they weren't elderly, which is an awful word, which is part of the problem. But the fact is, we're less physically resilient, and we do need to take more caution if we don't want to get more precautions if we don't want to catch COVID. So that does explain why the vast majority of deaths from COVID are older people, especially, of course, people in advanced age. But it does not explain the numbers, the sheer quantity. That, I think, is a reflection of valuing the lives of older people less, in particular, though, the lives of people in care homes, which overlaps with people of all ages with disabilities. People don't end up in care homes because they're old, they end up because they're disabled. And of course, it also exposed less care. A society that doesn't care about older people doesn't care about the people who take care of us. So, and most of the people in the US, and I bet the same is true in the UK, who do this work are underpaid. Women of color in the US, they don't have health care. They are often forced to work several jobs to pay their own bills, to support their own families, which puts them at greater risk, and the people, the homes that they travel to. So you see here the intersection of several different kinds of discrimination. But I took enormous heart in the fact that the very first person to receive the vaccine in the UK was a 90-year-old woman in her 90s. I believe she was 90. And so I am very gratified that people that, of course, healthcare workers, frontline workers in the health system are first in line for the vaccine, which I don't think anyone would have an issue with. But no one is saying, a few people are, but they are not being heeded, and rightly, in my opinion. Why are we giving it to old people who are going to die soon anyway? You're not hearing that hateful discourse. So, I don't think COVID has made ageism worse or made racism or ableism, which is prejudice against people with disabilities, worse. I think it has exposed what's been there all along. I think it's brought age and aging sort of out of the shadows into the center of the room, which I think is a very good thing, and given us a historic opportunity to build on that awareness around racial justice as well.
Yeah.
Can I come in here? Because I think just a couple of things occur to me. One, yes, absolutely agree with you, Ashton. What we had in the first stages of the pandemic was an appalling misstep, I think I'll call it, to be kind, by the government in not protecting older people in care homes. But the second thing I just want to say, you've got something really which I loved in your book. You said we need to have an image of aging that's somewhere between drooling and dazzling. And I love that because what you were saying in that is that we, at the moment, we're presented either with somebody like, I don't know, Helen Mirren or Jane Fonda, the dazzling end of it, amazing looking.
Like all of us.
Like all of us, indeed. And at the other end, you've got the droolers, the people that are sitting there hunched over and literally drooling down their chin. Now, most of us fit somewhere in the middle. We're neither dazzling nor are we drooling. And what was wonderful yesterday when we had all those incredibly interesting 90-year-olds being injected with their vaccine was that they were all so just brilliant, in the sense of they were just ordinary 90-year-olds getting on with their lives. Yeah. And we had one man, I just watched his interview, he was just so brilliant, and he basically said, I've been driving around here for the last half an hour trying to get a parking spot outside Guy's Hospital, and he said, so I was late for my vaccination, and then I went in and had a disgusting lunch, and then they gave me my, it was just brilliant. And my point is that he was I don't think people see many 90-year-olds on television talking like that, a man who's still driving, he's still
and talking about ordinary life.
Exactly. And I love the fact that this vaccine has given us an opportunity to see some perfectly ordinary 90-year-olds who are not in care homes, who are not, you know, drooling, if you like, just getting on with their lives. So I thought that was another aspect of us giving this vaccine to very much older people that was helpful in this conversation that we need to have about age and how we view it, basically. Sorry to interrupt there. Bryony, I'll go back to you.
It's okay. Catherine wanted to know, how can ad agencies be persuaded that they don't need to just focus on sort of stair lifts, tenor ladies, funeral care, etc., because she feels that that is all that she is targeted with?
Yeah, medicines. Yes, well, advertising, I think I already mentioned, is one of the most deeply ageist industries. There are a bunch of initiatives targeting ageism in the ad agency in particular. I don't know if you know of Cindy Gallup. She is a fierce proponent. There's a bunch of people. What ad agencies can do, wait for it, is to hire older people, just as people in old land should and people in tech should hire older people and people with disabilities, and just as clothing designers should have models who weigh more than 110 pounds and are less than 6 feet tall. If you consult the people who are actually going to buy the thing, you will by definition have a more your company will make more money, your products will speak to a larger market, and you will do better. It is sort of staggering that even in an incredibly profit-driven capitalist world, that the ageism is so intense that they don't even try and sell older people stuff, especially older women who have control much more of the disposable income, typically in households. We make most of the spending decisions. So it is unbelievably stupid, in addition to being, ignorant and wrong.
Yeah.
So just, keep pressing for representation of older people in the ads themselves, but also in the companies, on the rosters of people who are making the decisions.
Yeah.
Just like, people of color and queer people.
Yeah. Just one final question from Libby. She wants to know what single statement you would make to others when you felt that they were being ageist.
That's a great question. I sometimes, I only have one good snappy answer in over 15 years, I'm sorry to say, to when someone says you look good for your age, say brightly, you look good for your age too. And then let that uncomfortable silence sit there, because that is what we all need to do. If we just let it pass and don't comment, we don't shift the culture. A really good all-purpose response, and the tricky part is to not be aggressive about it or not be gotcha, is just what do you mean by that? Are you still working? What do you mean by that? Or what, to ask the person to think back on why something they might not, in the case of you look good for your age, they intended it as a compliment. Why doesn't it feel like a compliment? So to ask an open-ended question in a non-accusatory way that opens it up, hopefully, for a discussion. And if it comes to, those wretched birthday cards, you could say, gee, would you ever buy a card that made fun of who someone goes to bed with, or what color their skin is? Why do you think age is different? But not, why do you think we don't ask the same question about age, rather than you screwed up and I've caught you?
Yeah, no, definitely. Thank you so much. I'll hand back to Tricia. Thank you, Ashton.
Okay, so it's for me just to wrap up, and I just need to thank all of you for coming in on the call, and it's been brilliant to see so many, as usual. I obviously then, of course, need to thank Ashton for her contribution. Within my group, my breakout group, we all agreed that we thoroughly enjoyed your contribution today, so thank you very much for that. Let me once again recommend your book, whichever version you get. It's certainly an excellent read, and do look up Ashton's TED talk, because
it is, I pasted the TED Talk link, and the book, I should say, is available in electronic editions and in an audiobook read by me. And if you don't want to spring for the book, my website is thischairrocks.com. I've been blogging about this for 15 years now. Then there's tons of stuff available completely free there. Oh, and one other thing, a site called Old School, the Old School Anti-Ageism Clearinghouse, oldschool.info. Hundreds of resources of all types to educate people about ageism and what you can do about it. Everything is free except the books.
Brilliant. Somebody just asked, what is the name of the book? It's called This Chair Rocks. Okay, This Chair Rocks.
This Chair Rocks, a Manifesto Against Ageism, not a book about chairs.
And neither you nor I are going into our rocking chair anytime soon, Ashton, if ever. So that's a lovely note on which to end. So thank you very much indeed for today.
Thank you for having me.
Really enjoyed it. And thank you, everybody. Bye-bye.